My Lords, can I begin by thanking the Minister for her comprehensive opening statement and for the time she's already devoted to discussing the provisions of this bill privately, and I thank her for that. My Lords, I think I'm the first speaker in this debate not to have to declare a relevant interest, and I don't have any institutional housing interest, social, private or any other. I own one house and I live in it. And if I do have an interest, and the reason that I rise to speak today in this debate, it's the interest in living in a country that one day has a minimally functioning housing market. And unfortunately, we don't have that in this country, and that really should be the starting point for discussing this bill. We've got an utterly dysfunctional housing market in this country. We've got far too little supply, as has already been noted. We last met the 300,000 building target in 1977, and if we'd been building at the same rate as the French over the last few years, we would have 4 million more houses than we do now. It's not surprising, therefore, that house prices are at 9 times incomes, historic high, and most policy has focused on help to buy schemes rather than expanding that supply. So ideally, you would want to see a policy approach that involved building more houses of all kinds by liberalising planning, expanding supply in the rental market, and meanwhile trying to make the market that we've got work better and reducing the dysfunctions. Now, in fact, what we're seeing is that house building is falling further. Last year we built only 189,000 houses, and in Q1 this year we're building at a rate of only 100,000. There has been an attack on private landlords through the tax regime. The rental sector is shrinking, and that, plus anticipation of the measures of this bill, is taking private rental property off the market. And so it's no surprise that while sale prices for houses are flat, we're seeing rental prices in the private sector accelerate by 9%. So now we have this bill, and I have philosophical concerns that I think it's fundamentally unconservative, speaking as a conservative politician, and I have practical concerns, which is that it ties up and restricts the market still further, and the practical effect will be to make things worse, not better. And I regret that I have to speak in these terms for a bill that my own government's bringing forward, but I do think it's extremely problematic. If we want to help people, as has been said, into safe, secure, sound housing, reliable tenancies, we need to produce a better housing market and not distort it still further. Now, I've got 4 specific concerns which I will outline just briefly. The nature of the manifesto commitment that the government has, and secondly, its extent. The third, the restrictions that the bill brings in on the use of property, and fourth, its developing complexity. So first of all, the nature of the manifesto commitment that the Conservative Party and this government made. I entirely accept we committed to abolish no-fault evictions, Section 21 evictions. But also in the manifesto, we also set the target of 300,000 houses per year by the mid-2020s, not met. We also promised to make the planning system simpler for the public and for small builders, not met. We made an effort in the early years of this government. It got blocked, and since then we've given up the attempt. Now, these two things go together. One liberalises supply, and the other constrains the market. And I wish we'd only focused on building houses and reforming the planning system. But at least together there is some sort of balance. Now what we're doing is we have dropped the commitment to build more houses and liberalising the system, but we are still pushing through the provisions that tie up the market still further. And it will only damage housing affordability further. Second point, the extent of the manifesto commitment. As I said, we committed to abolish no-fault evictions. Yes. We didn't commit to end fixed-term tenancies. and they're not the same thing. Section 21 is a way, amongst other things, of ensuring landlords can reliably get possession after the first 12 months in an AST at 2 months' notice. Now, if we abolish Section 21, then another way of providing some certainty for landlords that they could get their property back would be to leave open the option of agreeing another fixed-term tenancy for another year or whatever. Now, this bill removes that option. It scraps fixed-term tenancies entirely. It makes every tenancy rolling and brings in the possibility that landlords will have to go to court much more often to recover their property. And I repeat, one commitment is in the manifesto and another is not. And that's why my honourable friend Anthony Mangle MP tabled Amendment 10 in the Commons, providing for the maintenance of fixed-term tenancies. And I'm ready to table that again to ensure that we can get some debate on the subject and so that the government can explain why it's expanded its commitment to take in fixed-term tenancies. Third concern is philosophical. This bill takes another step away from normally understood property rights. Even if both parties want to, they can't agree a fixed-term tenancy. It's illegal. A landlord may no longer choose who they want to rent to. Landlords must accept pets. They can't simply recover their own property, but they must persuade the courts, the state, that they've got a justifiable reason for doing so. So we're already too far down the road as a government and as a country of meaning that people enjoy property rights only at state whim and only in line with the purposes of the state. And I'm afraid this bill takes us a step further down that road. Finally, my lords, practical concerns. Looking at the way this bill has evolved in the Commons, I can't avoid the impression that in its heart the government knows it's a bad bill and in its efforts is trying to mitigate this under pressure. It's realised, for example, that the redress schemes, the Decent Home Standard, the PRS database, all of which may be good things in themselves, will all reduce flexibility. They will all push up costs. The government has realised the risk that restrictions on long-term lets might bring in a shift to short-term ones, and so it's brought in some rules to cover that situation too, though I note these too will now require further mitigations to deal with special circumstances. And of course, as has been noted, the government's had to accept that the court system isn't ready to deal with the abolition of Section 21 in full, and it's had to delay its introduction. So we aren't even getting credit from our political opponents for the one thing that was supposed to be the purpose of this bill in the first place. Everything that's happened in the Commons has brought in complexity, cost, delay to the system, and these are the very things that would drive more landlords out of the market, push up prices further, make the market even more dysfunctional than it is now. So to conclude, my lords, I'm sorry to conclude in this way. You'll know it's with great reluctance that I criticise the policy of my own government. It's a poor bill, and I don't think it's getting any better as it proceeds through the Commons and through this House. It's inevitably going to make the private rented sector smaller and more expensive. It's pursued from the best of motives, but its consequences are going to be that housing supply shrinks and the cost of housing goes up. It will generate more social problems rather than mitigate them. So I'm sorry the government is pursuing it, but I do hope that it will still be possible to improve on it in some of the fundamental points that I've mentioned in committee, and in particular to retain fixed-term tenancies as an option, and I hope some noble lords will join me in that effort.